Diane, thanks for joining us. I want to hear more about the Conscious Protection Act that is being voted on Wednesday.
Sure, and the reason why we're having to do this is because of this administration, which would not surprise you at all. There has been, all the way from the time when Roe v. Wade was decided, a provision that would allow people who have a conscience issue about abortion to not have to participate in that particular procedure. And if it violated their personally held moral principles, they were not forced to participate in any way. And now we have an administration that, regardless of what was found way back in 1973 when the court decided on Roe v. Wade, or the Church Amendment or the Weldon Amendment, none of these make any difference because the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights has now been finding contrary to that. And so we feel that we need to make clear and also add to this a little bit, because in none of those provisions I just talked about does someone have a personal right of action to the court. And so we are adding that because the Office of Civil Rights takes a long time to make a decision on that. In the meantime, there are a lot of people that are being hurt by waiting for those decisions. And at the end of the day, those decisions are being made to what we believe contrary to what has been a long-standing agreement, actually bipartisan, that if someone had a conscience issue, they would not be forced to participate in abortion.
You know what, Diane, it's so frustrating to me because people cannot understand that part of it. I am somebody that very passionately defends the freedoms of all people consistently. My track record is untarnished. And that includes Muslims and Jews and Christians when you're talking about religion. And, you know, when it comes to the gay marriage and the wedding cake, why can't people make decisions for themselves? And if you don't want to, you know, in the case of gay marriage, not perform a wedding service or bake a cake, you should be able to. And in a case like this, if you don't want to perform an abortion because it's against your moral convictions, you should not have to.
Absolutely. And I go back to Thomas Jefferson and his statement. And I love this statement, and I use it all the time, because he says, no provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that which protects the right of conscience against the enterprises of civil authority. And the civil authority is the government, where they are telling people, like a young nurse who was being forced to be a part of a disassembly abortion, where she was having to count the parts of the baby body as it was being aborted. And it really affected her, very traumatic, and yet she was being forced by her employer. And I can go cite case after case where this is happening around our country.
It's incredible. And I try to come up with other scenarios. Can you imagine if the people that are pushing this were to, if you were to say, you must be the one to pull the switch or inject the drugs to put somebody to death when they've been convicted and sentenced to death. Can you imagine if they say, I just can't morally do this? And we're sorry, you're on the hook for it. Somebody has to do it. You got to do it.
Well, there's actually a protection for someone that works in the government, and where there is a case where there may be a death penalty that is being carried out, that because of their moral conscience, they are not required to participate in it. But we're not giving that same protection to someone related to abortion. And I think we all know, we once again can point to an administration that is the most pro-choice administration we have ever had. And that he just believes, and his administration believes, that no one should have a right of conscience on this particular issue. And then we also can point to what's happening out in California, where you have churches out there that had insurance policies that did not provide for abortion, at least elective abortion. And yet now the state of California is saying, no, there cannot be a single insurance policy, no matter whether even an insurance company wants to provide it to a church without that provision in it. They are not allowed to have it because the government of California says, no, you can't have a single insurance policy even available to a church if they so decide that's what they want, and the insurance company says, yes, we can provide it. No, the the state government of California is saying, no, you can't even offer that. Is that not despicable? And so that is another piece that is covered in here.
See, and I've got two issues with this. Obviously, of course, you should be able to decide based on your conscience whether or not you will take part in something like this. Of course, I support that. But then to your point about the administration, there's also a lack of consistency, and this is the thing that really puts me over the edge. Although I wouldn't agree with them on something like this, at least I could respect them that they were passionate about their causes and they were consistent and applied these rules fairly. But they do not, Diane. I do. I even check myself on some things I want, but recognize it has to be a right of yours.
And exactly, and I want to go back to a comment that the president made in 2009 at Notre Dame. He said, let's honor the conscience of those who disagree with abortion. We agree with that, and we want to call him on that. He made that statement back in 2009, but we see his move way, way over since then, and it is just not an honoring of anyone else's thoughts or moral conscience on this. It's just we say that's what you're going to do and that's what you're going to do. What about if we reverse that and we said, oh, a woman was walking down the street, and by the way, we don't think you should have this child. We're going to force you to have an abortion. We wouldn't think that was appropriate either, would we? And yet, at the same time, we don't have it go the other way. Of course we need to have people have a right and don't have the federal government telling us what we can and cannot do on this or any other issue where we do have rights.
You know, when you lay it out like that, it sounds like you're saying the president's just being political. I mean, he's just willing to waffle for politics. Crazy. That's shocking.
Come on.
All right, Congresswoman Diane Black from Tennessee, how can people affect some sort of change? How can they say, yes, the Conscious Protection Act is a good thing? How can they support it?
Well, I would encourage them to call their legislator and make sure their legislator is online with this. We will be taking this bill up on Wednesday, and we want to have a large vote on this and make sure we send a message to the White House, and then we'll also be sending this over to the Senate and to the President's desk, and then we'll just see what he has to say as we hold up to him whether he will sign this or not. The fact that he did make a statement in 2009 that we should give people a right if they have a conscience issue on the issue of abortion.
Diane, one of the things I like about this bill, too, is it seems to be a completely clean bill, too, where no amendments, nothing is going to be able to be added to it before the vote. That's important, too, right?
Exactly. And I do want to mention that we still do give a right of anybody who wants to participate in abortion. No one's taking that away. And we're also providing in there, because I'm a nurse, and I want to make sure that it's understood that in emergency cases, we as healthcare professionals will never, ever, ever not take care of someone regardless of whether there was an abortion or not in an emergency situation. So EMTALA, which is the acronym for that emergency situation, is still provided for and soundly dictated in this bill.
That seems quite reasonable. On top of the protection, the freedoms, freedom of conscience, that seems quite reasonable that nothing can be attacked. And it doesn't look like this is a chipping away of abortion. If you're on the other side, it's just saying, listen, certain people don't want to be involved. I don't think they should have to be. So
it does not change the legality of abortion one iota.
All right. Diane Black, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck, okay?